But it was Leibniz, of course, who had disputed with the English philosophers in favor of the Theodicy in his famous letter to Caroline. And Caroline had merely followed his lead, something that one would scarcely have suspected on the basis of what Leibniz had written to Wolff. At the end of his letter to Wolff, Leibniz slyly added that, quote, "It is welcome that my opponent has touched upon matters which are not to be resolved by mathematical considerations, but about which the princess herself can easily form a judgment," even though it was Leibniz himself who had steered the discussion in the direction of natural theology and away from mathematics. In his excellent book, Newton as Philosopher, Andrew Jamniak has written that it was the extensive debate about Newton's methods that spawned the famous correspondence between Leibniz and Clarke in the early 18th century. But if one is sensitive to the immediate historical context in which the correspondence arose, he is bound to arrive at a quite different judgment concerning its origins. It is true, of course, that the methodological issue concerning mechanical versus non-mechanical causation in nature was one of the many issues that divided Leibniz and Newton, and it is true that it did indeed surface in the course of the correspondence with Clarke. But even then, it arose as part of a theological debate about the nature of God's activity in the world and the nature of miracles. And it can hardly be said that it was an issue that spawned the correspondence, or even that it was a dominant theme in the ensuing debates. Leibniz's indictment of the English philosophers in his famous letter to Caroline does not so much as mention the methodological dispute. Rather, the indictment focused exclusively on the corrosive effects of English philosophy on natural religion. And in the correspondence that followed, Leibniz continued to focus primarily on how the philosophical views of the Newtonians detracted from the perfections of the world and of God. In his war against the Newtonians, Leibniz had a number of strategic goals, and to discredit appeals to non-mechanical causes in scientific theorizing was certainly one of them. But it was not the one that spawned the correspondence with Clarke. The strategic goal that spawned the correspondence with Clarke was more personal, and it became necessary to pursue it only and directly in response to change conditions on the ground, specifically the ascension of George I to the throne of England and Caroline's move to England as Princess of Wales. With his last close, powerful ally now behind enemy lines, Leibniz's strategic goal in the letter that ignited the dispute with Clarke, as in others to Caroline that had preceded it and would follow it, was clearly to get Caroline solidly on his side in his struggle against the Newtonians and to reinforce her loyalty to him. And the tactical means that Leibniz employed to accomplish this goal in his skirmish with Clarke was to try to turn Caroline's interest in natural religion and her devotion to the Theodicy and the translation project to his account and against the English philosophers that he portrayed as being destructive of natural religion and as therefore standing in need of all the help that Leibniz and his Theodicy could provide. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.